M&Ms?
M&Ms. What about M&Ms? We love M&Ms.
Did you bring me any?
I can bring you as many as you want.
Snickers too?
Snickers too, and Three Musketeers and Twix, and I can go down the line. So.
Even though it's just been Halloween.
We produced those Halloween products earlier in the year, so we have plenty of capacity.
Next time.
Next time.
Let's talk about
Sure.
the world. Halloween's a big one for you guys.
Yeah.
How does the world feel right now?
Well, as it relates to Halloween, this is one of the biggest rituals in the United States in terms of what, the general public participates in. And this is the first, I would call it, unencumbered Halloween we've had in about 3 years. And so we've seen business be absolutely robust. And we knew that was going to happen. We tried to prepare for it.
Better than you expected?
Better than we expected. Yeah, better than we expected. And so we're seeing not just good orders, but we're seeing good sell-through on the back end as well, which is the real telltale. Because, we can do a great job in getting it there, but consumers have to transact, they have to consume, and see the shelves get down. So I think we're very pleased around what we're seeing for the season.
So I have to say, one of the things I wanted to kind of start with, we had a planning call, and you said to me, we were wrapping up the call, it was at the tail end, and you said, quote, I think, my transcription is right, when we look back and how we manage this time, what we do for the next 2 to 3 years as leaders will be managing for a long, long time.
Right, yeah.
Why is it? That sounds pretty heavy.
Yeah, it sounds pretty heavy because, look, COVID was a black swan event.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a textbook case of a black swan event. We didn't see it coming. It was much more intense than we anticipated. And candidly, the world was not that prepared to deal with it. But we learned a lot about ourselves. We learned a lot about our companies. We learned a lot about, in our cases, our brands.
Yeah.
And the things that we learned was consumers love our brands. And I think we knew that. I think that was reinforced, I think, during the pandemic.
Did consumers eat a ton?
I wouldn't say a ton, but what I would say is they really enjoy it. And I think part of...
Anybody put on weight?
Okay, but they really enjoy it. And I think what they found when you're at home and you can't have your normal mobility patterns, that, you make choices. And I think consumers made choices. They connected with things that were comfortable for them, that was familiar with them. And, in our case, confection was one of those things. And in some cases, they changed their buying patterns because people didn't know if they're going to have access to a grocery store. Yes, online, but maybe a physical brick and mortar store didn't know. And so they tended to inventory more product than they would have ordinarily done. And so we're starting to see that even out post-COVID. I think the second thing is, certainly for our associates, their concept of work. And how do you value work? Where do you produce work? And what is that relationship between work and your life that you've just reevaluated for the last 2 or 3 years? And so you can imagine, yes, an existing household, but imagine a younger household that's going through this, or a Gen Z person is sort of saying, wow, my sense of the world is now unstable. I may value things differently moving forward, whether it's consumer choice, whether it's where they live, whether it's how they act, whether it's what they work, whether what work means to them. So I think there was a lot of reconsideration around that. So I do think we're in that reevaluation period for quite a few things. And I think certainly for larger companies, global companies, how do we feed into that? How do we co-create around what that experience should be? And how do we deliver a work experience in particular where we can attract talent?
It sounds kind of warm and fuzzy. But getting workers back, I think this is the real dilemma because safe to say during the pandemic, right after it, many of the conversations we had about working from home, a lot of very well-known heads of companies were like, yeah, we're going to let them work for long, forever, maybe. Fast forward, that's really not the case. What do you think, and what are you guys assessing in terms of ensuring growth going forward? What do you need to do in terms of workers? Do they have to be in the office?
Yeah, well, here's the dilemma. We spent essentially 2 years proving you could actually do work from home.
Yeah.
So producing work is not the issue. I think for large corporations who are trying to have a great talent base and sort of create development and progression, it is about what does that culture feel like? How do you create a culture where you can attract the best talent across the world? And we think a part of that is having physical proximity, having common experiences, having common physical experiences. And so I know for us, we're in a relatively new headquarters that we opened literally the first week in March of 2020. We closed it the second week of March of 2020. And so, but
still looks brand new.
Still looks brand new. Still looks brand new. But we built it with great contemplation around the kind of work experience that we wanted and how important it was to our culture. And our culture is very relationship driven. We like to fashion ourselves as innovators and creators. And so in some cases, you need physical proximity for that process to blossom like we anticipated it will.
It's not the same through a Zoom call.
It is not the same. I'm not to say that it can't be done.
Yeah.
But there are certain things you just have to get done in person. There's certain exchange of ideas and where the energy and the passion and the breakthrough, that tends to happen in person. And so making sure we have balance between flexibility, which people need and deserve,
Right.
and then really doing the really special work that we think can only be done in a face-to-face environment.
But it could be hybrid then,
It
right?
could be hybrid. It is absolutely
You're still
hybrid.
figuring it out.
We're still figuring it out. Now, our policy is officially hybrid, 2 or 3 days a week. You know, we try not to be too restrictive, but we want people in the office. And so for people like me, we're trying to curate an office experience. Just really want people to come in. We don't want to beat people over the head and say, come into the office.
Right.
We need to create an experience where people want to come in and want to have that culture and want to have that exchange as well, while providing the flexibility on the back end.
You talk about innovation in the candy space, and I think a lot of candy, some of my favorites, are kind of like they've always been. But so how do you guys think about innovation and growth? I will say M&Ms, peanut M&Ms, my favorite.
There you go.
But I mean, like, you do kind of figure out different iterations. But what does innovation in your space mean?
Well, innovation means a lot of things. And one of the things that we try to do, and I don't think we're unique in this, is innovation can mean a broad range of things. Yes, I can give you a new something, something that doesn't exist or has never existed. I can also expand, in M&M's case, it's like, look, we are going from offering a product to offering an experience. And what does that look like? That means that I can go and buy it in a grocery store, I can get it online. Let's call those transactions. That means I can have an experience at an M&M store here in New York City, in Beijing, in Germany, and have that part of our ecosystem. That means that you can go and customize your M&Ms as well. That means I can add a character like we did with Purple. First character in 10 years. And what does that mean? It means that we're trying to make M&Ms mean something, have a point of view in the world, and hopefully that's consistent with our growing consumer set.
It moves the needle.
It definitely moves the needle. It has to move the needle. It's an 83-year-old brand. So if you can't think in a very integrated way that it's going to appeal to a broad set of folks in ways that make sense for their value system and that brand's value system, then you're going to be dead in the water. So I think we have connected with that, and we're really trying to advance that as well.
When it comes to a consumer product like that, and I think about when I buy candy, a lot of times it's I'm at the store, I'm at the checkout, or I'm on a road trip, and I'm like,
Yeah, right.
But you have stores.
Yes.
What do those stores do for elevating the brand, maybe reaching different customers, or as you said, creating an experience?
Well, you know, the way we try to design a store is that it is very much of an experience, and it is a physical experience in our case. And so the store in New York City, look, you're gonna find things in a store that you can't find online, that you can't find in a grocery store, for instance. And so that's one. Number two is we have a very engagement-oriented brand. And so you're going to be able to engage with M&Ms in ways you can't do in a pure transaction environment. And then, you know, the locations are really thoughtful. And so we just two new stores this year, one in Disney Springs last year or so, in Disney Springs, and one in Mall of America. So those are high destination areas. And so we're trying to make sure we're around that people are going to have mass and interest in the space. And then M&M's is a part of that experience as well. So we get to leverage the location, and then we get to leverage the experience in the context of the location as well. That's where we think the magic happens in those stores.
You know, something I asked Scott Mills at BET earlier, and this whole idea of when you've had a brand that's around for a while, like the brand that you oversee, it's that, you know, you do want to stay true to the history of it, right? The iconic brand. You don't want to muck around when you have something that has such great brand recognition, but yet you do kind of have to continue to move it forward. You do. I know one of the things you do, you guys create content. Like, so how do you think about the future?
We think about the future.
M&M's in the metaverse?
M&M's and others in the metaverse. You know, we have a slew of brands. We market roughly 30 brands here in the United States.
A lot.
So quite a few. There's a couple of ways. One, especially with older brands, it's all about relevance. Right? You got an 83-year-old brand. It needs to be relevant 83 years from now, 100 years from now. So that is a constant process. And the great thing is we have fantastic sort of content partners with our advertising agencies as well. And so we come up with a foundation and a compass around what that brand should look like and what it feel like and what should it mean. So we build its DNA. We build its value system. And then the real magic is how do we create around that value system such that we are really pulling in consumers that want to consume. So people are very familiar with the product.
Right.
Comes in a lot of our options, so on and so forth. But it is, this is a highly competitive space, a hyper-competitive space. High substitution. And so we got to make sure that we're being differential in creating the content and in drawing in consumers in a very differential way. Usually only ways that we can draw them in.
So what I find interesting too, and you and I talked about this in our prep call, is I'm kind of a nut trying to eat really healthy beyond the occasional M&Ms. So how do you figure, like, how do you think about how you stay relevant in a world increasingly where even my daughter, when she was 9 or 10, was turning things around and looking at the ingredients?
Yeah,
like,
well,
how do you?
No, it's an excellent question. First of all, I think we are very clear in terms of where we fit in people's consumption. Look, we're not a main meal. We're not a snack. I always tell people nobody needs an M&M.
Have you ever had M&Ms as a main meal, though? It's a peanut. It's a
peanut. Well, we know.
I'm just going to tell you, it works. Anyway, go ahead.
But no, but so we understand the context in which we compete, and we understand the context.
I'm having some fun with you.
No, that's fine. No, and we understand the context in which we're asking people to consume,
Yeah.
and so we never lose sight of that. The great thing about the pandemic, going back to the pandemic, people felt like, look, I need to have balance in my life, and so a simple pleasure, a small pleasure, an inexpensive pleasure, one that has high value, still has a very significant place. There's still a job to be done as it relates to a treat on that perspective. And so what we try to do is to make sure that we're fulfilling that with a lot of variation, but not taking ourselves too seriously. And I think that's why we always maintain a place in people's diets if they decide to snack. Now, you did talk about peanuts, and so most people don't know, but we're one of the largest purchasers of peanuts in the world. And so we support a tremendous agriculture around the world. Quite a bit. I can't name it. But there's an ecosystem behind it, which goes all the way to the farm. And so when we start talking about agriculture and sustainability, I mean, it goes all the way down to the very foundation of what the product is built on. And so that gives us another platform, particularly for Gen Z, to sort of tell our story around how do we cultivate, how do we build, how do we innovate, and how that's consistent with the value system that they have moving forward as young consumers. And then at some point they will form households and take that into a family formation.
That sustainability issue, I think that is such an important issue. We all take food for granted, and certainly during the pandemic, and seeing empty shelves for the first time for different things was like, what? But I do think climate change, we hear it over and over again from anybody. We see it because of the war, the Russian war in Ukraine affecting the grain market. Is it getting more difficult to get the things you need?
Yeah, I would say in general.
Or is it there? Is climate change impacting that?
No, climate change has been impacting us. We're just now getting to a point where we're not arguing about it anymore. It's happening. It's been happening. I think we have better science and better accounting in terms of seeing what's happening as well. And I think for us, particularly as global sourcers, meaning we source our inputs from all over the world. So what happens in Ukraine, in Russia, in Beijing, in the Middle East, impacts our ability to supply because we're a global business. And so clearly we see it. We work with governments. We work with smallhold farmers. Just for our cocoa business alone, we support 350,000 small freehold farms.
That's how it's done.
That's how it's done. That's how it's done. The cocoa nuts are on trees. They have to get down. They have to be sliced. They have to be given to an exporter, and they have to be brought to the producing locations as well. So it's not just the product itself. It is the entire value chain that represents. It's all the communities that it represents. And so we have to make sure that we're sustaining communities and having sustainable products and sustainable practices over time.
Let me ask you about something, because you're in the food space, the inflation story, which is just off the charts, and we talk about it all the time. Everybody knows if you've done any kind of purchasing of food items. How problematic is it for you in terms of managing those costs? Yeah,
look, inflation is real. There's no doubt about it. I mean, we're at 40, 45-year highs. I'm old enough to know when my parents had a 21% mortgage rate, and we had inflation for the oil bar go back in the late 70s and stuff. And so, we've seen this before, but we haven't seen it in this modern context in a highly globalized economy. That's what actually makes it different. And so we see it. The first thing we always try to do is we try to offset it with productivity. We look on our own balance sheet. We look at our own P&L and sort of say, look, how can we not sacrifice quality, get costs down, get expense down, and try to get very innovative in terms of how we get costs down over time. But this is not just inflation. This is extreme inflation. This is extreme inflation that's come at us suddenly, right? So we didn't see it on the horizon. We came out of the pandemic, and then demand shot up, right? That's a recipe for extreme inflation. And the great thing about it is, we have maintained relatively low unemployment levels, so there's still dollars out there to be spent and put into the economy. We've never had that construct of things in an economy before as well.
We don't have the playbook on
this. We don't have the playbook. This is a new world. This is a very new world as well. And so a couple of things we do. We always look at our side first. And then, we understand that pricing is a necessity, and so we obviously do that. If you look at the data, we have priced with the category. We're not out of bounds with the category, but also we're trying to deliver value. To the extent that we can deliver value over time, that is really our objective. If you look at it on a price per gram or a price per ounce basis, we're still delivering that value in a way that's been consistent over time. We will always do that. At the same time, we want to be able to spend back against the business to drive new consumers. And you need a certain level of margin to do that. So it's not the concept of that we price and we take all that and drop it to the bottom line. As a private company, as a private family-owned company, we have a very long horizon. Right. So we're not.
A luxury of being
It's a luxury. Now, don't get me wrong. We're a financially driven company, but we drive our finances to drive a broader idea around how to make the world a better place. So there's a different construct in terms of how you create economy and what you do with that excess for us. And for us, we invest. We invest in sustainability. We invest in innovation. We invest in people. We invest in the planet.
And you can still do that, even with inflation and higher input costs.
We can absolutely still do that. We can absolutely still do that.
We have a really important question that's coming
Sure.
in from the audience.
Yeah.
Has the Mars bar been discontinued?
Yeah, so the Mars bar has not been discontinued.
All right, who did that? Raise your hand.
We still carry the Mars bar. For those of you who are not familiar with the Mars bar, it's one of our original products,
Yeah.
but it has a very European base. And so if you spend any time in Europe, Mars bar is a very large brand for us. Not as large in the United States. We still have manufacturing here, very large in Canada,
right?
very large in Mexico, but not as much in the U.S. as well. But no, I can tell you we probably will never discontinue the Mars bar. It clearly has the name of the family and the company on it, and it's a fantastic product.
I did want to ask you, we got about 4 minutes left. There was a poll this morning, and it says, what is the most important component of your long-term growth strategy?
Yeah.
And the options were leveraging innovations in technology, prioritizing customer loyalty, and satisfying concerns of sustainability. Now, the audience, everybody gathered here, said leveraging innovations in technology was the top answer. What would you say? Yeah,
I would definitely say technology, because technology allows us to go and drive value across the value chain. I think that's going to always be a fundamental for us. But sustainability is really huge for us. We about 5 years ago, we introduced sustainable intergeneration, which is our master plan in terms of how we're going to go after some very aggressive sustainability goals.
Right.
And so I would tell you at Mars, there is no way that we're going to grow without making the planet safer and with a lower carbon footprint. Those two things are actually interconnected for us. It's funny.
Does that mean moving like factories and things around so that it's closer to where you're selling?
Yeah.
Are we seeing more? Are you guys doing more and more of that?
I wouldn't say that we're doing that because we're a global business, and so we believe in a global supply chain. We need to have a global supply chain.
Right?
Still. Now, don't get me wrong. The pandemic has taught us a few things around location and sourcing circles.
Okay.
Around how do we make that more efficient, and how do we make sure that if we get out of business in terms of supply in one place, that we have some type of redundancy in a certain part of the world. So I think we're getting stronger in terms of our supply chain designs as well. But ours is a very holistic approach, and I think the thing about it is not just the money, and then if we have some left over, let's do something with sustainability. It's very integrated. As a matter of fact, part of my long-term...
From the top down.
From the top down. Part of my long-term compensation is how do I deal with making the world a better place, making it more sustainable, and building more trusted partnerships as well.
Wow.
Right? And so that's the great tension that we have with our economic model, and then our purpose part of our business in terms of driving how we want to be in the world, how we want to change the world for good.
So let me ask you, Anton, because we do talk about too, like ESG, I feel like coming through a reckoning.
Yeah.
So profitability as important as sustainability?
Yeah. Well,
is it equal?
No, we don't distinguish between the two. Right? What we say is we need to generate profits to go and
so
drive sustainability.
So if you hit your goals on sustainability but not on profitability?
I don't think we can hit our goals on sustainability without hitting our goals on profitability.
Interesting.
Sustainability is an investment. It's an investment that takes place over a very long period of time. And our concept is, look, we need our profits. Now, the trick is, how do we deploy those profits to now go and drive sustainability, and how do we make that a virtuous circle? Keep in mind, we're a global manufacturer. We need to have sustainable agriculture. We need to have sustainable supply. We need to have security supply. It's impossible to do that without having a sustainable construct. And that's what we believe in, and that's what we invest in.
We only have about a minute and a half left. Since you guys are global, and I know we talked about the outlook in the beginning, are you worried about a global recession?
I wouldn't say that I'm worried about a global recession.
Do you expect a global recession?
I do think we're going to have some form of a global recession. I think the question is how deep and how long, right? I think that's the things that we're always
hard to say right now.
Hard to say right now, and by the way, it's going to be different in different parts of the world. China looks very different because we got 300 cities and 100 of them are closed.
Yeah.
Will they open? Will they open at the same time? There's a lot of conversation around that. We have a conflict in Ukraine and Russia, big part of sort of where we do business as well. Who knows how that's going to go as well? Europe is a very complex place for a lot of reasons, sort of multi-market area.
Prime Minister in,
Prime Minister in, Prime Minister out, economic policies all over the place. At some point, I think they're going to settle down.
U.S. the strongest right now?
Yeah, I would say the Western Hemisphere, I think, is probably the strongest and probably the ones that they're going to be able to withstand as well. Now, what that portend is, what does that do to your capital strategy?
Yeah.
What does that do in terms of M&A, potentially? Those types of things. I think we're evaluating all those types of things to make sure the business lasts another 100 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
My rapid fire. We're into rapid fires around here. Question every leader should be asking themselves today when it comes to their customers. Quickly.
Yeah. Do me and my customers see value the same way? I don't think we can move forward in a construct where I need to get as much as I get or the customer needs to get as much. I think we have to have joint outcomes and joint plans. Because a customer can't do it by themselves, a manufacturer can't do it by themselves, the customer community and the manufacturer community can't do it by themselves. This has to be joint objectives.
What is something you think we all should keep an eye on for clues about trends that may impact the growth and direction of our world?
Yeah, for me, it's pretty simple. The next generation. It's Gen Z. Look, they're going to form the households in the next 10 to 20 years.
They don't want to come to the office.
They don't want to come to the office, but they need to work. And they need to work, and when they work, they consume, and so that's our economy. So look, like anybody would tell you, whether you're running elections or running a business, look, the next generation is telling you what's going to happen. They're telling you what you want. And so I think for us as leaders, regardless of age, you have to listen to them. You have to build a construct and operating model that accommodates their hopes and dreams and expectations. If you don't, you'll be dead in the water.
All right, and if you have 20 minutes of found time in any given workday, how would you spend it to further grow your business and strategy? And as I said earlier, meditating, taking a walk, doing nothing are okay answers.
Yeah, I try to be still as much as I can. Because,
really?
Yes, because
still meaning just
still. Because we're running around so much. We're on planes, trains, and automobiles. We're in meetings. We're in media. We're in everything. And so I think being still, because I found that my best ideas, where I get in touch with myself, is when I'm alone, and when I have time to think, and I have time to challenge my own thoughts, which is very important as a leader. I clearly have a point of view, but I need to be able to be open, to be influenced, to challenge myself. So I'm ready to lead. And so I would have quiet, still time, which is comes at a premium in my household. So.
Amen. I'm with you on that. That's why I get up early on the weekends and don't wake up the family.
Exactly.
Anton, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So love this conversation.
Thank you.
Please, everybody. Anton.